What's up guys, it's Sebastian here from Noble Frugal Studio, and today I'm going to teach you how to add dynamic lighting to your animations in Opentoonz. I already know you guys are going to love what I have in store for you today, so don't forget to leave me a like if you enjoy the content, and let's get started. Last week I posted a poll asking you guys what you would like to learn most about shading in Opentoonz. Most of you were interested in learning shading methodology in Opentoonz, so today I'm going to teach you just that. I'll also give you some advice along the way as for what colors to choose and so on and so forth. So in this scene I have 3 different backgrounds, each with their different tones. So we have a sunny beach morning, a nice beach evening, and a cool night. I'm going to go through all 3 of these scenes and use a different shading method to make our character here blend in and stand out in the composition. So I have my character here, and we're going to be focusing on making her fit into these scenes. The cool thing about each of these shading methods that I'm going to show you is that they all allow you to use your character's local colors. You don't have to change anything on your character's color palette. All these effects I'm going to show you are going to go on top of your character to make them blend in. Your character's natural colors are the colors when pure white light is hitting them. So that's really important to remember because our scene has yellow light. And as you can see, it doesn't really look like these two match up. What you notice is that in each of these backgrounds, our character sort of stands out like they're on top of the background and not like they're in the scene themselves. So what we want to do is make her blend into the scene using lighting and shading. We'll start with the first method, and as you can see, this sunlight is very bright and yellow, but it really looks like our character isn't really being affected by that at all. So what can we do? Well, the first method, which is the most common, I think, amongst Opentoonz users, and it's very simple, is just to add a shading layer. So let's go above our character. I'm going to add a new raster layer, name this shading. I'm going to turn off the render. Also, the backgrounds in this video were all made in Opentoonz using the advanced shading method, which I'm going to show you as the last shading method. And all we got to do is basically just draw in the shadows. So we just go on this layer and we just draw in the shadows. So for a character like this, you're going to need to know the planes of the head pretty well in order to know where to draw in the shadows. So we just fill those in. What we're going to do is we're just going to decrease the alpha here. Now, I really do not recommend using black as your shading color, especially when you're coloring humans or anything that's alive. Some artistic advice is that when you're coloring something, you want to take into consideration what color the light is. So this light that's hitting our character is yellow and her skin is brown. Since we're painting skin, it's pretty much we can usually put our saturation up when we in the shadow colors since there's a lot of blood content in the skin. Basically, all you got to do to choose a shadow color is color pick the color you want to shade, bring it down in value, and since we're painting skin, we're going to bring it up in saturation. And lastly, we're going to put the alpha down just so it blends in nicely. All right, so let's do that for the rest. So looking at this now, we see that there's also some ambient light coming from the sky that's blue. So what we can actually do is in our shadows, we can make them cooler than our character's local color. What this will do is that in effect, it'll tell our eyes that the light that's hitting them is warming up their skin, that it's yellow. If you want to learn more about shadow colors, light temperatures, I really recommend watching Marco Bucci on YouTube. And I also took a lighting course recently before making this video, and I really recommend you take that course as well. I'll leave a link to it in the description. All right, so we have some cooler shadows. It's okay to make them cooler even though we're painting skin, as long as they don't make the character look dead. As long as it still looks like skin, it's fine. When a color is really dark, it's okay to shade it with black. It's only when you have colors that have a lighter value that you want to use a different color to shade them. The colors of the shadows help our eyes to know what color the actual light is. So this is actually looking pretty good so far. All right, so that's about done. What you notice that for each different color, I chose its corresponding shadow color. And that's what this method is all about. This is actually the method I used for shading in Castle Dark. It's really easy to understand. You just paint in the shadows. If you guys want a more in-depth video about shadow colors, let me know in the comment section below. All right, so what we gotta do next is go into our effects schematic. Now, ignore this. This is spoilers. And for most of you are gonna have to go over to animation to do this, so I'm just gonna go over there to help you all out. Let's hit the preview button so we can see what our rendered result looks like. Next, we're gonna go to our character. So you have our shading layer right here. If you wanna reorder all your nodes, all you gotta do is hit this button, and everything is in order from top to bottom. Okay, so you have our character here and our shading above it. Let's go to shading, insert effects, matte in. As you can see, the shading went away. Click this arrow and drag it over to the matte section of your shading matte in effect. So from the character to the matte, from the character to the X sheet, shading, source, X sheet. So your shading is only going to the source and to the X sheet. Your character is going into the matte of this effect and going to the X sheet. Make sure that's happening. So now we can see that our shadows are kept within the vicinity of our character. While this shading looks good, we want to preserve those black lines that we drew as the outline of our character. So what we're going to do is hover over to this string that's connecting character to matte, right click, insert effects, toons level, palette filter. Double click on it to bring up this window and set it to 1 or whatever color your lines are. And now our lines are preserved. Now we can go back into the drawing tab, render that. Looking over my shading, I can pick probably some better colors. And for the skin, we can go a little more saturated too. There we go. Same thing with, I want the eyes to look cool. Maybe just a little more saturation on the jacket. It is a pretty vivid pink, so the ambient light's probably not gonna do much to it. That wraps up the first method, which is the shading layer method. All you gotta do is make a new layer, draw in your shadows, preferably using colors with lower alpha than your character has. Add the matte in effect to your shading layer to make sure the shadows stay within the border area of your character. Then a palette filter to keep the lines black. And I have to say, the before and after, pretty good. We actually made this character blend into this scene pretty well. I like this method because it's quick and it's easy to understand. Although it can get time consuming when you have a character with a lot of colors like I have here. And with this method, we've had to use our character's color palette as the colors that are being affected by the light, which to me don't really look like they're being hit by yellow light. They just kind of look like my character's default color palette. In the next method I'm going to show you, you don't have to come up with all of these colors in order to shade your color with. In fact, we're not going to come up with any shadow colors at all. The next method is the shading and lighting layer method. It's a step up in complexity, but it's very, very simple. What this next method does, in my opinion, completely outshines this first method. Let's check it out. I'm gonna hide the shading layer we just made. So we go back to default. Next, we're going to add a new layer, name it shading and lighting. And what I want you to pay attention to is the colors of this scene. As you can see, we have a yellow light coming from the sun. But if the sun wasn't there, you would just see this blue skylight coming down, and that's blue, this is yellow. So we have yellow versus blue. The dominant light source in this situation is this sun right here. As you can see, wherever the sun is shining, you don't see a lot of that skylight coming down. But when the sun doesn't hit something, you see a little bit of that blue influence coming down, especially in the clouds. So using that knowledge, we're going to make our shading and lighting using the shading multiply layer method. I don't have good names for these. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna select our first color, and this is gonna be our ambient color, the weaker light in this situation. We have two light sources, the sun and the sky. The sky is the weaker light, so we're gonna pick that color first. Let's go over here, pick the sky color. Just draw a box around your character and fill it in. All right, if we render that, that looks just like how it's supposed to. Let's reorder our nodes again. And we have our shading and lighting layer right here. Go to insert effects, matte, matte in. Gonna do the same thing, drag the character into the matte of this matte in effect. Great, so now it's showing inside of our character. Next, we're gonna go after this, we're gonna go right click, insert effects, layer blending, multiply. Okay, so what we have here is that blue skylight influencing our character's colors. So they kind of make the character blend in a little more with that skylight. And on this same layer, so we can actually, when we're in the viewer, I'm gonna decrease the alpha of this. Setting the alpha, we can choose how much of that skylight we want to influence our character. Just so I can see what I'm drawing when I go back, I'm just gonna do about that much. Next, we're gonna make a new color, and it's going to be the color of the dominant light source. Set this to this orangey yellow color, turn the alpha all the way up. Basically painting white into a layer that's blended with multiply basically erases the multiplication effect. As you can see, that's our normal color. So what we're gonna do is we're not gonna paint white. We're going to paint this yellow sun color so we can get our lighting. Let's paint that in where we want it. Take into note two things. If you want to erase something on this layer, you have to use your first color to draw it out. Erasing it will just get rid of both things, and we need that blue to get our skylight effect. Another thing is that we're not drawing highlights right now. Highlights would be, for example, the hair doing something like this. Highlights are actually reflections, so we can treat them separately. I actually forgot to do those on the first lighting method. We'll do them after this. So we're just gonna draw the area that the light is hitting. So something like this. You don't have to be too precise with these light lines since they're all going to be inside the character, at least on the border that is. But once you get inside the character's border, you have to be precise as always. So I want most of this face to be in the light. So let's just do it like this. So note that we're not drawing the shadows. We're drawing the lighting in this situation. It may take a little while to wrap your head around, but we're drawing the lighting. All right, that looks good. Next, let's preview that. And we see we have this sort of burnt orange looking color. It kind of looks like a light is hitting her, but it's kind of a dim one. Good thing about this method is all you have to do is just change the tone color. Sorry, I actually forgot to switch to the evening scene. So all I did is I just moved the frame over. Drawing in all of our lighting. The cool thing about this method is that we don't actually have to switch colors. The layer blending will actually do that for us. So we don't have to keep picking a color for every single palette entry we have. You just choose the color of the light and let the layer blending determine what color that will be with the effects. So we're just drawing the lighting, not the shading. All right, so when we're done, we have this cool sort of toned down lighting effect. It kind of works for this scene, but stuff like this green color on the pants is really not what we want. So we're gonna go over to the shading and lighting layer in our effects, right click, insert effects, light, glow. And then we're gonna take this node and stretch it to the source as well as the light. And voila. Personally, of the three methods, this is my favorite one because all we have to do is choose one shadow color and one light color, and boom, we have this. We're actually not done yet though. In the last one, I forgot to draw in the highlights, which are the reflections of each light source. So we can do that now. Make a new layer, highlights. All you have to do is think of the sun shining, hitting something, and then reflecting right into the eye of the camera. So I'm just gonna take out this lighting, shading and lighting layer since it's kind of distracting. On the highlight layer, I'm gonna take a very light yellow, or you could just use white. In some situations you can use white, but just gonna take a very light yellow. I'm gonna do the reflection on the glasses. It's a classic reflection in anime-esque styles. See that reflection in the glasses? It may not be perfectly logical all the time, but if it looks good, then it's all right. I'm gonna do a reflection in the eyes. Her eyes are round, so it's gonna be kind of distorted, but basically the sun's reflecting in her eye. Maybe it's not perfect, it's kind of in pieces. There we go. Then this eye is gonna get some too. Let's probably we wanna make sure our highlights are within the area of the light because they won't show up in the shadows. So we're just treading on areas that are just in the light. Then in the hair, of course, that classic anime highlight look. And on the rim of the glasses, definitely, since they're made of like a metallic substance. Since they're metal. Nice. Maybe just on the edge of this coat, since the coat is sort of a smooth material. All right, render, and that looks amazing. So shading with a multiply layer is really, really cool. I think this is my favorite method since it looks great, but it's also pretty quick to do. You don't have to choose a bunch of light and shadow colors. All you have to do is choose your character's normal palette colors when you draw them, and on a layer above it, just make the light and shadow layer. Then above that, we got the highlights, and you're basically set. Give this a little more oomph. Gonna just hit reorder nodes, go to highlights, insert effects, glow. Make that the source. Bada boom, baby. That looks awesome. Gotta make the highlight in this one a bit bigger. What's cool is on the highlight layer, we can also do is I'm gonna go pick a blue color and just add a little bit of that ambient light from the sky. So we got this ambient light coming down from the sky. Maybe it's just giving a little bit of shine to the top of her hair. And since it's the weaker light, I'm just gonna turn down the alpha on it. Nice, turn down even more. That looks super cool. All right, so in just a few minutes, we really leveled up this sketch. So are we done? Is that basically it? The answer is actually no, because this multiply method is great and it can work for when you don't have to add a lot of light to a scene. This scene is still relatively bright. It's evening time. I don't have to add too much light, but if you want a really bright and intense light and you want the layer blending to do the heavy lifting of that color choosing for you, we have the last method, which is the advanced method. I'm gonna hide the shading and lighting layer. We can keep the highlights actually, because the highlights don't really change. Since they're a reflection, they don't really change between each of these methods, so we can keep those. To show you guys the next method's application, we're gonna go to the night scene. And during night, we could use that multiply level to shade our character and it would look okay. But really, sometimes at night, when there's only one light source, you don't really see that many colors. And when you use a multiply layer, a lot of your character's basic colors are gonna bleed out through the light, which can be good in some situations. It's really just, you know, where you want to apply this, basically. If you want your character's colors to be drowned out by the light instead, say the light is really the only source of light and the ambient light is really weak, then this is the method for you. It also works during very bright sunny days where the light is so bright that the colors of your character don't really shine through. So we're gonna take our character. And as you can see, she doesn't look like she fits at all in this scene. It looks like she's somewhere else. We're gonna fix that. We're gonna add a layer, name this layer tone. Set it to, there we go. Just make that and then add a new drawing here. Click on tone, shift, click on your character, right click, collapse. Then we're gonna enter this sub X sheet. So we can right click and do open sub X sheet. Now we just have our character in this layer that we called tone. We're gonna do the same thing with the tone that we did last time. We're just gonna take the ambient color. So if we exit the sub X sheet, click here, right click, close sub X sheet, and we render, we see that our ambient light is this very dark blue, and it's gonna be very weak because there's not a lot of it when it's nighttime, depending on what time of night and such. But this moon is shining very bright. So that's a very bright light source. And we have a very bright dominant light source and a very weak secondary light source. So we're gonna hit Shift X, we're gonna make the tone, set it to a dark blue, turn off the preview, draw over our character, fill it in, make sure that's the blue that we want, like that. Then in the X sheet, there's a palette filter here, tone, insert effects, matte, matte in, character goes into the matte. Let's render that, nice. Now after this, we're gonna, after the matte, insert effects, layer blending, multiply. Now we have our ambient light. As you can see, the night sky is very dark. We don't see much. Also, putting a tone over your character helps all the colors blend together. All right, so I'm gonna hide the tone. Alt X to exit the sub X sheet, or you can just right click and do enter or exit. Now we render, we have this. So now she actually blends in a lot with this scene, but we need to have this moonlight hitting her. And as the background is actually still standing out, but we're not gonna worry about that for now. All right, let's reorder our nodes so we know where everything is. This column 11 is our character and the tone. So let's name that here. Let's separate that so we know where it is at all times. We're gonna add a layer on top of this. We're gonna call this light. All right, so in light, we're just gonna choose a color for the light. It's gonna be this sort of blue. And then we're gonna draw in where we want the light. All right, reorder those. We have our character and we have our light. We want to keep those together. Go to light, insert effects, matte, matte in. Put the character as the matte. Let's go over here. This is why you have to make sure the character is going to the matte and to the X sheet. Awesome. As you guys can probably see, you know where I'm going with this. After the matte in, go to insert effects, layer blending I and O, and hit linear dodge. It's not gonna do anything. Go to the character and put it in the back of the linear dodge. Awesome. So this doesn't look like it did much, but we're gonna make some adjustments in a second. It's gonna look absolutely awesome. It actually looks pretty good right now, I will say. Next, we don't want the black lines to be covered by this light, so we're just gonna go to our character, go on this trail that's leading from the character to the X sheet, right click on it, insert effects, Toonz level, palette filter. You have this now, set it to 1, set it to lines, delete all areas, then set it to keep. So we don't see anything happen, the black lines are still being covered. The reason we don't see anything is because the lines are still being preserved, but they're underneath this light. We need to help them over. Go to the palette filter, insert effects, layer blending, over. Put the linear dodge in source 2 and the palette filter in source 1. There we go, now our black lines are showing through, and that is already looking awesome. And we're not done yet, guys. Next, come over to light all the way at the beginning. Right click, insert effects, light, glow. Hit that with the source. Bam, baby, that looks amazing. Now we can select a less bright color. You might even end up selecting a very, very dark color because it's such a powerful effect. That looks awesome. So in here, it doesn't look the greatest, but it looks really, really good outside. So I'm gonna decrease the alpha and then make it a brighter color just so I can see what I'm drawing when I'm not previewing. All right, that looks good to me. Cool thing about when you have just a light layer, you can again add another color. I'm gonna make this really, really dim and just do the little highlights on the hair. And then of course, on top of this, we can add our highlights. I'm just gonna make another frame for the highlights layer. I'm gonna make a third color, which is like this moony blue, make it all the way bright, and just draw in our highlights. Gotta get that anime glasses reflection. And wow, that really makes it pop. Look at this eye right here. All right, then that is the final shading method. Although the most complicated, I think it yields really, really awesome results. That's basically the way I like to add shading and lighting in Opentoonz. Sorry if this is completely disorganized and confusing. I hope you guys can sort of make sense of this, especially this effect. I'm actually gonna take these and I'm gonna group them because this in entirety is the final lighting effect. Hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial. I know I enjoyed it. It took a lot of work to make, so please leave me a like if you learned something new. If you want to see more tutorials just like this one, guys, let me know what you'd like to see in the comments, and feel free to browse my channel because I'm sure you're going to find something that you like there. If you guys want to learn more about light, color, ambient light, diffuse light, hard light, soft light, exposure, all these different topics. Recently, I've been looking at a lighting course on domestika.com. The multiply layer method and the linear dodge method actually originated from what I learned in that course. I hope you enjoyed. If you want to support my work or the making of my film Castle Dark, follow the link in the description to my Patreon page. With that said, I will see you guys next time. Peace.